how big of a connection you're making, meaning the consciousness that you have, the thought that you have about that connection, is actually how much light you reveal.
Welcome to Spiritually Hungry. Today we're diving into a question that might seem simple. Usually the most important things sound simple, but they're hard to execute. But this is anything but simple. And our topic is, what is prayer? And of course, it's individual to each person. There's many views on what it is and how to practice it. Most people think prayer is something you do in a church or a synagogue or in the heat of a crisis. It could be a whispered plea, a last resort, a kind of deal making with the divine, the creator. God, if you fix this, I'll do anything, right? I'll do anything if, and you fill in the blank. I've been there. I remember it was the only time in my life that I resorted to that kind of desperation. That kind of plea was when our second son, Josh, was born. And the diagnosis came, and we were going to test again, even though they didn't want to the next day. We insisted. And I remember that night I begged God. I said, I will be a saint. I will do anything.
You are a saint.
If this is just not the reality. And I think that I'm actually happy that I experienced that, because I can relate to people who really do that and they don't understand why their prayers go unanswered. And it's not that they're unanswered, it's that we're not really understanding them. So,
because right at the core of the question of prayer, I mean, the topic of prayer is the question, right? If one believes, as most people do, that there is a force, you can call it God, we call it the creator, the light of the creator, and you have a need. Well, it's not like they compare it even in ancient writings to a king, that you beseech the king to give you one thing or another. But the reality is, this force that we call the creator is an energy that knows all. So what possible need is there to tell him, listen, I'm hungry, I need a meal, or I need a house, or I need a soulmate, right? So as a straight letting this force know doesn't make any sense. Right. So it must be something else and something deeper.
So it has nothing to do with getting the outcome we want necessarily, right? That's usually what leads us to pray. It's not informing the creator of our needs, as you just said. The creator already knows what we need. So as we understand it, and what we're going to share a lot of different deeper meanings to it, but prayer is basically a spiritual tool. It's a way to open up a channel between you and the light, the light force, right? It's creating a pipeline so that your desires are going somewhere, and you're able to be a co-creator in manifesting that.
Right. If I can just underscore that, I think at the core of the Kabbalistic understanding or understanding of prayer is that each one of us is a soul, a being that resides within, really, what can be called the waters of God, or the energy of the light of the creator. But, and this is maybe the most important understanding, and it's fundamental to everything, but certainly fundamental to the understanding of prayer, that we have to both create a connection. It's up to us. So that even though the light of the creator desires to give us everything all the time that we need, that we desire, that's good for us, but you have to create that connection. So that's one thing. The understanding that humanity, and again, I think there's different views on this, but the Kabbalistic view is that it's not, we need God to do. No, God is doing, or the light of the creator is doing. And one of my favorite quotes is that the light never stops shining. What we need to create the opening for that light to enter. There's a famous quote from one of the ancient Kabbalists where somebody asked him, where does the light of the creator come? He says, anywhere you let him in. Mm-hmm. And that's the understanding. So prayer at its core is to enable an action. Prayer can be in thought, it can be in word, it can be in action, but a tool that we use to allow ourselves to connect to our source, to the light of the creator, and allow that light of the Creator to flow into us. And of course, as you said before, there are many other levels to it. There's many other tools in the realm of prayer. But at the core, if you wanted to really understand deeply why it is that you should, at least 3 times a day, if not at least once when you wake up in the morning or throughout the day, it is that conscious connecting to the source, conscious connecting to the light of the Creator. And just one more corollary to that is that when you are connecting to that source, how big of a connection you're making, meaning the consciousness that you have, the thought that you have about that connection is actually how much light you reveal. I want to make that clear, right?
Right.
That there's, again, another beautiful and fundamental teaching from the Zohar, the fundamental text of Kabbalah, that the light of the Creator is revealed to the individual depending on his conception of it. So if I am as I'm sitting here right now, and I would recommend to every one of our listeners, stop for a moment and simply close your eyes and say, I want to connect to my source. I want to connect to the light that is surrounding me at all times. I want to connect to the light of my soul. And depending on how powerful that moment is for you, that's how much light it's going to reveal. If you really accept that you have the ability in 1 second to connect to the totality of light that's all around you, that's what's going to happen.
That's why for some people, it's nature. For other people, it's music. It's anything that's really going to awaken those sparks inside of you that really, wow, you connect to something that you know is far greater. You're moved. You feel a sense of enlightenment, right? I think that prayer they're not merely words. It's really what makes us God-like. So through those acts, whatever they may be, we become that which we're trying to connect to. And I think that's really the power of prayer.
Right, because once you're connected to the endless light, you have the endless light within you. You are the endless light.
And therefore, you're able to manifest the things you want. You're able to draw the blessings. You're able to recognize things you couldn't before because now you're in a different state of consciousness. And that's really, in a nutshell, why prayer is not only important, but absolutely necessary, because nothing else really gets you to that. I mean, there's prayer, there's also study, and then there's also action, right? The Baal Shem Tov talked about those 3 things, and there needs to be a balance of all 3, right? You can't just pray all day. And again, depending on where your consciousness that is, if it's how effective it's going to be. But you also need to then study, because what are you filling your consciousness with? What helps elevate it? And then you have to act on it.
Yeah. And I would say that what you said is absolutely true. And it's maybe a stark statement. But for our listeners, if you go through life on your own, obviously you're limited in what you can do. If you pray every day, and now we understand what that word actually means, as you said, it's not necessarily kneeling in a church or sitting in a synagogue or a temple. It actually is anywhere and everywhere you are, actively connecting to the light that's surrounding you all the time. And you can do that for 1 second. You can do that, by the way, and that's why there are some great spiritual giants who would pray for 1 second, and some would do it for 18 hours. But
depending on how fast you get to where
exactly
you need to go.
And but this is the point, unless you're praying every single day in this understanding, you're going to be much weaker and smaller than you're meant to be, and you'll be accomplishing much less and much more difficult for you to accomplish that than you actually meant. So prayer is actually a portal, when used in the right way with the right consciousness, to everything. And that's why Kabbalistically we don't start our day. The first thing we do in the morning is awaken a prayer, awaken our connection to our source.
Right. There's a prayer you say right when you open your eyes.
Yeah. And I was actually thinking about it today, and we have it, there's different books that have it, but it's a beautiful prayer because, as we said, the first state of prayer is a state of connection, but actually preceding connection has to be appreciation. Mm-hmm. So prayer is, and that's why the ancient Kabbalists, whenever there's a prayer, they always have at least 2 parts. Well, actually, it's 3 parts. One is appreciation, followed by request of connection, and then ended by certainty in the connection that was made.
Say those 3 again.
Awakening of appreciation.
So that's the first prayer.
That's the first prayer. So if you want to pray, the first thing you should do is think about, I appreciate that I'm alive. I appreciate that I'm able to breathe. I appreciate that I'm able to walk.
Right.
Second, then I want to connect to the endless light. And you might say, I need it in health, or you might say, I need it in business, or you might say, I need it in relationships, but you're connecting to the endless light that's all around you. And third, you give thanks and appreciation for the connection that you know that you've made.
And why is that third one important?
Because it is the certainty in the connection that we made that manifests it completely for us.
Because then it's the knowing that this exists and something happened. with it.
Exactly.
And so you're not praying to a God that's far away or a picture in your head, but it's actually something that's now inside of you.
Exactly. And if I can just say that morning prayer, which I think I try to think about it every single day, even though I've been saying it for over 50 years. But I thank you, my source, my creator, that is alive and gives life, that you have given me back my soul with kindness and mercy. And when you I would strongly recommend every one of our listeners, by the way,
that,
if you've never prayed in your life, you will see that if you start your day off with that, and again, you have to use those exact words. There are ancient Hebrew words. You could say it in English, or you could just meditate it in your mind. But if you say these words, if this is the first thought that you have in the day, it will change your day. And as we said, so the first is awakening appreciation. The second is connecting to that source, to that light that's around us all the time. And you can draw it specifically to areas in your life that you need. And then you end with an appreciation for this connection and the certainty that you have drawn and connected to that light.
Well, it's funny because Anne Lamott, she's a writer who I like her work, and she wrote a book entitled Help, Thanks, Wow, which is a funny title. Help, Thanks, Wow. And
so we're saying thanks, help, wow.
Right. So it's a different order, but I think it's interesting. Help is a plea for assistance, right? Recognizing that we're limited and we're not meant to do it alone. Thanks is a form of gratitude, recognizing the good things in life and the blessings we receive. Wow is an expression of the awe and wonder, appreciating the creator and everything. So it's very similar, which is, truth is truth.
Would you recommend that book? I don't know if I've seen it.
Well, I recommend parts of everything, but there's another book called The Time Is Now by Sister Joan Chittister. And she's echoing the same thing the Kabbalists say, which is we need to become a living prayer, which I really like, right? It's that idea of, again, the creator embodying you.
In Psalms, King David says, I am prayer.
Exactly. That's beautiful. So becoming a living prayer is having sustained, unshakable connection with the creator when we come to a place where prayer and living are the same, right? So I think it's a good moment to kind of unpack what people pray for, because it needs to get real, right? Often it's clarity.
Is that really? That's interesting.
I think so, because that looks like this.
If you had asked me, again, I don't know, there must be a study out there somewhere, and ChatGPT probably knows, but I would assume that people ask for specific things.
Yes, but let me unpack it. Yeah. So clarity, because if not, it's suffering, right? Nobody wants to suffer. So they want clarity into what is it?
Why is this happening?
Yeah. Why did this happen? What is the lesson? What am I meant to do? How am I meant to grow through this experience? When will it stop, right? It's, of course, you want the miracle of it, but I think first, we often like to get our heads around something. So then,
definitely you. We're different in this regard, but yes.
I think most people are this way. So becoming a prayer is asking those questions, not just of the creator, but ourselves. And I think that's a really important point I want to make, because we consciously look for answers to everything throughout our day, right? And then when we get desperate, we go to the creator to answer those questions. But I think the point of prayer really is to understand that you're not praying to something outside of you. You're praying to that aspect that's in you, and they need to be connected, right? So we talked about how prayer is a way for you to tap into your soul, right? And to make sure that you are living in that every day. So I want to further unpack this. So let's say somebody's praying for health and healing, right? We might pray to overcome an illness, or even pray for somebody else too. So our part, though, instead of just only praying to God, please help with this, is to become a prayer. So we can meditate, visualize our body getting healthy and strong, or visualize somebody that we want to be healed, to have that healing. We co-create that health by doing everything we can to promote healing daily in ourselves, and also visualizing in the person without any doubt. So, and again, to have no doubt in situations that are really difficult, that's so hard. And that's usually, again, when we tend to look up to the skies because, oh my God, I'm so scared what's going to happen. But this is how you become a co-creator. And I give you many examples.
And I think that's a beautiful and important point, if I can underscore it, right? That a further deepening of the tool of prayer is really, and this is done by the thousands-year-old prayers of the Kabbalists. You first draw your consciousness, your attention to the fact that there is a force, for instance, healing. When we ask for healing, we acknowledge that there's a force, the endless light of the creator, that can awaken healing. And then we go particular. And therefore, I want to become a force of healing as well. You could think about yourself. You could think of somebody else you know. And there's that duality of focus for every single prayer. There is a source of healing. There is a source of wisdom. There is a source of sustenance, the endless light of the Creator. And I want to be connected to that and therefore be able to awaken that for myself and for others. And it's really beautiful. I don't know if you intended this, but that's literally the way every single Kabbalistic prayer works. It starts with the acknowledging of the divine source of healing, of sustenance, of blessings, of relationships, and then goes to the particular. I want to connect to that light, and I want to also have the ability to awaken this for myself and or for others.
Right. So no, I love when that happens, by the way. So I want to give a few more examples,
Sure.
which you actually just mentioned. When we pray for our loved ones, we pray for their well-being, their safety, their happiness. Our lives become a prayer when our interactions with our loved ones align with those intentions, right? So how often do we pray for our children to be happy, but our exchanges with them are not full of joy and happiness, right? So there's a disconnect. And I think that to bring prayer is something that is up close, personal, and internal, right? So that your external world can meet that. It can't be something you declare or look up to the sky asking for it. You actually have to live it in a very practical way, right? So next time you pray for that kind of thing, specifically ask yourself how you're living that
That's a very
prayer.
important. I think you should repeat that. It's really important because, and I think this is what you mean. If your actions contradict your prayer, the prayer won't be able to act.
Where will it
and create.
rest? There's
Right.
there's no vessel to contain it. So it's
So,
sure.
but now finally you've said something I think you need to unpack, right? So, because we said before the other two parts, right, where there is the appreciation, calling for that connection. Then we added later, then my ability to use that power
Living it.
myself. But the final part is what we call manifesting within me. So prayer awakens, right? Awakens light, awakens connection, awakens even my ability to bring healing, for example. But then it has to manifest. And if your life, if your actions are contradictory to the energy you just awakened, you have a potential healing, potential ability to bring sustenance, or potential ability to bring good things to your children, but your life isn't being lived in that way, it won't be able to manifest.
Right. I mean, I often quote this movie 'cause I love it, this part so much, Kevin Almighty, where he asks God, please help me with X, Y, Z. He's like, well, if you're asking for patience, you think I'm just going to give you patience, or I'm going to give you opportunities to be patient, right? So there is a very specific system set up here that we absolutely need to be participating, co-creating, and not just look as the creator as something far from us, or that we try to bring near only in those times of desperation. Another one, if we pray to seek wisdom, right? What should I do? Which decision is best? I don't know the right answer. Please send me a sign, right? That's a really big one. Becoming a prayer doesn't mean you'll have all the right answers, but it does mean you're open to receiving messages, that you're able to tap into your intuition, that you're able to see through the veils that a person has and really look at their soul.
Can I add to that? And this is a little bit of a tangent, but it's because you inspired me by what you said. Another purpose, important purpose of prayer, is to change us. And I think this is where I think it's really important to keep, I know we've done this in previous podcasts, but to remind our listeners where the Kabbalistic spiritual path really diverges from other paths. A lot of people study spirituality, use the tools in order to get what they want, right? So how can I manifest this? How can I get more of this? And of course, there's truth to that, but that's not the real purpose. The Kabbalistic view is that I came into this world one way, with things that I need to change and to grow. My selfishness needs to be transformed to sharing, and so on. So when we pray, we're not only saying, I need this, I want that. We're saying, I know that I'm not yet, if I'm alive, it means I still have more change that I need to go through, who I'm supposed to be. Change me. I ask in that light force of the Creator, the endless light of the Creator, help me change in the ways that I need to change. And therefore, to what you were saying, which is, do people want to gain clarity? Maybe one of the greatest gifts of prayer would be when you're okay actually not having clarity, right? Because people don't even need clarity, right?
No,
they just want to be happy.
They want security. They want to know that
they want to be happy. So if you could imagine if you were just as happy with uncertainty as you were with certainty, then it doesn't matter. You don't need certainty. What you're looking for is the end goal. The end goal is to be happy. So if you are a crazy person, for example, who thrives on uncertainty, then you don't need certainty. Then you don't need clarity.
Also, if you're asking for blessings, right? Ask to be the person that can see blessings in everything, because they can be right in front of you. You're not going to recognize them because you're so busy in your narrative of, woe is me.
Exactly. I mean, for example, I remember I read this article years ago about this very, very well billionaire who lost almost all of his money. I think he was left with only $84 million, right? Yeah, and I always say this, imagine him on that day. The worst day of his life. He's right, the most down, I'm sure, depressed, right? For the rest of us, if we were just told, hey, you have $84 million in your bank account, best day for the next 100 years. Yeah. So it's all a matter of perspective, meaning, a person might say, oh, I need this deal to go through. Well, actually, maybe what's going to happen at the end of the prayer is going to say, oh my God, I have all these deals that just went through the past 6 months. I'd like this to happen, but if it doesn't, big deal. I'm so happy. So when we talk, so this all falls under the category of prayer to change us, because really what we're searching for is that peace, right? Call it happiness, is that being okay with where I am, with what is going on, how much money I have in my bank account, what things I know are going to happen, what things. And if you view, first of all, you have to view the purpose of life to be changing, then prayer is one of the most powerful ways to do that. Where you actively, again, whether you use ancient prayers or use simply the words, I'm asking the light of the Creator to give me the ability, the desire, the strength to change in the ways that I'm meant to change. And I think, this is why there's a famous story that famous story from a great Kabbalist, Rabbi Melech of Lishensk, where one of his students came to him and said, I've been praying to God, I've been begging God for this thing over and over and over again, and God's not answering my prayers. And he said, the Kabbalist says to him, he says, yeah, God answered your prayers. The answer was no. Because the point is, people, again, have the false assumption that prayer is supposed to, how do I get this thing? Well, as we said before, there's other deeper understandings, but this is maybe the deepest, that the real purpose of prayer and prayers, that meditation, focus on the source, my soul, is change. I want to change. I want to have the strength to change. I want to have the desire to change. I want to have the clarity to change.
Right. So kind of just you don't even need to be specific about what you want. It's more just about connection to the endless light, and then that
right. But now I'll give you a paradox. Because prayers, we said before, it is a way to awaken light, right? And there's a famous story in the Torah, in the Bible, where Jacob is, those of you who don't know the biblical story, it's quite a dramatic story. Jacob and Esau, his brother, there was a tremendous amount of rivalry between them. At a certain point, Isaac, their father, is giving a blessing. They fight for it. Jacob steals the blessing, and Esau hates his brother for it, wants to kill him. Their mother, Rebecca, tells Jacob, do yourself a favor, leave town as quickly as you can. He does. He comes back many, many years later, and he's about to meet his brother. His brother still wants to kill him, still wants to harm him. And Jacob prays, and he says, save me from the hands of my brother, from Esau, because I'm afraid of him. And he goes on to explain what he needs and why he's afraid. But the Zohar makes a point. God knows who his brother is. God knows his brother is Esau. Why did he have to say, from my brother, from Esau? And the Zohar there says that when you're asking for something, this is another tool of prayer. And it is something important. Mm-hmm. You should be as specific as possible, which is interesting. Because if you understand that what you're doing through prayer, you're not informing God, I need this. You're actually awakening a new channel of light for this thing that you need, assuming it's important, assuming it's right. And therefore you want to be specific.
So yeah, those last two
of course,
caveats are very important.
Of course. And that's why, again, I've shared this before, but that every time after I pray, and I would recommend for our listeners, every time you ask for something specific, then I say in the ancient Hebrew, "V'atov be'einecha aseh," which means, but that which is the right in your eyes should be done. Meaning, if the light of the Creator knows that this blessing is not for me, I don't want it.
Right.
Exactly.
Very important piece. So there is a word called kavanah, right, which is intention.
Right. It also means, in Kabbalah, it also means direction, that the way you meditate, you are actually, because like we said before, prayer is actually directing light in different areas. But right.
So it's not just motivation, it's direction. And the Kabbalah stressed that kavanah, it's the engine of prayer, right? Without having this kind of thought, prayer is like a husk without a kernel or a body devoid of a soul, right? So I think a lot of times people are like, they go through the motions, and that's the importance, I think, of mentioning this. You can say the blessings in the morning. You can pray 3 times a day. You can, think that you're doing it, you're not getting the results, but where is the consciousness, intention, motivation?
Exactly. I think, right, I'm not sure how many of our listeners, pray religiously, and I mean that in a good way, right?
I know, but I was just speaking to somebody recently that I met, and he kept saying that he was a religious person. And so I got curious about it, and I asked him questions. He's like, well, I only know one prayer that my grandmother taught me, and I say it 8 times throughout the day, which I thought was interesting. And I thought, actually, the prayer must be really powerful, because he really is holding on to that one prayer, and he's saying it over and over and over again, right? So I thought that was really amazing, because it showed his desire behind it.
Right. But what you're saying, which is really important, especially for those who pray, quote unquote, religiously, meaning all the time, especially if you're using either ancient prayers or modern prayers, make sure that your intention is there. Because I could tell I pray 3 times a day at least. And I have to be and I've been doing it for, 50 years. I have to be very careful not to get into the routine of prayer. Because unless it has, as you said,
like
kavanah,
checklist, you did it today.
Yeah, or you just, the mind wanders. Unless you're directing it, unless you're being very intentional in your prayer, it's almost not going to do anything. Which reminds me of a beautiful teaching that I read recently.
I want you to say it, but first it reminds me of that David Letterman bit with Joaquin Phoenix.
Oh, right. Sorry you couldn't. So, well, for those of our listeners, if you haven't, it's on YouTube. Watch the Joaquin Phoenix interview on David Letterman. Very, very funny. And Joaquin Phoenix is playing a character who's this weird musician. He's not playing himself, right? So he's giving half word answers.
He basically showed up still in character on the Letterman show.
So he's not giving answers. It's very strange, but entertaining, I strongly believe. And at the end of the interview, David Letterman says, sorry you couldn't be here with us this evening.
Yeah, but I think David Letterman didn't think it was that he should have shown up like that. Like, clearly, I don't even think he knew. I didn't start out like that, right? And then midway through, he's like, wow, I'm carrying this by myself. But that's what it reminded me of when you were speaking. Like, to make sure we're not...
Right, you're intentional. And as a matter of fact, the Kabbalists...
what was the ancient teaching?
But the Kabbalists say, actually, better to pray less with intention than more without intention. So intention is as you said, kavanah, that ancient word, is the most important. So there's a great Kabbalist, and he, again, as I said, it's such beautiful. He says, don't pray unless this is how you're doing it. He says that prayer is actually the constant state of the soul. The soul is constantly connected and desiring to connect more and more with the light of the Creator. So the soul, I always like to think about this, because we live our body life, and we're usually much more conscious of what's going on with the body than what's going on with the soul. But right now, as you and I sit here now, and as every one of our listeners is listening to this podcast, you want to know what your soul is doing? Your soul is connecting to the source of the light of the Creator. Your soul is filled with desire to connect even more and more strongly. He says, and what should happen, and this is the way to pray, is that you're manifesting within your body what your soul is experiencing all the time. That connection and that desire to connect. And there's both. So you're bringing so beautiful.
You're feeling it.
You're feeling your soul, but actually your soul is in that state of prayer, connection, and desire for more all the time.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's really powerful.
Yeah.
Huh. All righty. Well, I think we said it all. What do you want to add, Mr. Berg?
If I could share one more idea around prayer, that I was actually studying this yesterday in the Zohar. And the Zohar, as I mentioned before, is the foundational text written thousands of years ago of Kabbalah and spirituality, really all spirituality. And it says that as we go through life, when we do negative actions, when we do selfish actions, our soul recedes from us, right? So let's assume, just for the sake of understanding, you have 100%, a person is born with 100% of their soul. And that, children are pretty good. And then when you turn 13, 14, 15, you start acting selfishly, you start hurting other people, you do negative things, you say negative words. And unfortunately, us adults do that as well. What happens is that a part of your soul recedes away from you. And of course, the more negative actions one does, the more of that soul that dissipates.
Where does it go?
It stays around you, but it's not within you. You don't experience it. It's not blessing you. It's not making you happy. It's not making you sad. By the way,
It's doing the opposite.
Well, I would say anytime you're unhappy, anytime you're disappointed, there's only one reason. Not enough of your soul is within you. And who is the cause of that? We are the cause of that. And therefore, the Zohar says that one of the great purposes of prayer is to call back our soul. That when we pray, and that's the intention of prayer, that we said, as we said all the way in the beginning, that I'm connecting to the light of the Creator, but really what I'm connecting to is the great light that my soul is, that I want to be able to, I want it to be within me, and I want to be able to experience it. Because if I experience my soul and I have the wholeness of my soul within me, I'm happy, I'm fulfilled, I'm powerful, and I can do anything.
It's funny, I have this visual, I think in this way, the cartoons where they're like, they go into a forest or they're going like, hello, yoo-hoo. It's like, that's really what we're doing to our souls every day, calling us back, come back.
Hopefully we're conscious of it. And now
this is a really great consciousness to have, because from the moment we wake up in the morning until we go to sleep, there's unseen forces that are trying to achieve just that, to get us to do the wrong thing, behave in the wrong way, to pull us further away from ourselves and not let us realize it.
Right.
And usually we bite the bait, actually.
And we have to actively draw our soul back. And that is one of the most important purposes of prayer.
Very inspiring.
Yes. So I hope that we've inspired our listeners, and we've been given a few specific tools and ways to both think about and meditate with prayer. But I having been a prayer-er, if that's a proper word, for many, many years, I promise you that if you use it in this way, you will see immediate changes in your experience of life and certainly your spiritual connection and growth. But before we end, I'd like to share with our listeners a good moment to remind all of our listeners, write to Monica and Michael at spirituallyhungry.life. Monica and Michael at spirituallyhungry.life. All of your stories, questions, comments, inspirations, we read all of them. It inspires us. And those that we get to share with our listeners, it inspires them. So make sure you do that. Make sure you go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, write 5-star reviews, share this podcast with everybody that you know. Trust me, this one everybody needs. So this is from one of our reviewers on Apple Podcasts. I discovered Monica through the Kabbalah Center app after listening to The Power of Intentions. I was instantly hooked. She carries a frequency of authentic love. I'm currently listening to The Power of Words. And it's so funny because Monica is totally me and Michael is totally my husband. The way you both respond to the same things, LOL. I am really enjoying what you share and teach. Thank you for creating this podcast and for your work of love.
Love that.
And the reason I have to say I get to read all the reviews and only the good ones. I don't read the ones that aren't good. That's not true. And also all the letters and emails that you send us. No. They're all good. But what I loved about this is the ending here that you wrote for your work of love, which is really what I think we try to do with everything, whether we're talking about relationships and love or a lot. And we actually get a lot of feedback from our listeners on this. That is the most important thing, to awaken love.
All you need is love. Da, 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 da. Sing with me.
No, you're doing a great job.
Love.
So please share this podcast with everybody that you know. Share the love. And we hope you enjoyed listening to this podcast as much as we enjoyed recording it.
Stay spiritually hungry.